Hey, hey, hey everyone, Anthony Fantano here, internet's busiest music nerd. I hope you're doing well. So, this month, if you haven't noticed, actually marks the 10th year anniversary of Frank Ocean's big breakout debut mixtape, Nostalgia Ultra. I thought it would be interesting to come through here and talk about some of my thoughts on that project, especially how it has aged over the years, the influence it seems to have maintained, especially since at the time that it dropped, I didn't really review the project. At that point in time, Odd Future hype was really in full swing, and up until this point, Odd Future was very solidly like a hip-hop outfit. And even though this thing was dropped to very positive reviews, not rave reviews, it wasn't getting like 5 stars across the board in every direction, the fans still took to it very passionately, which honestly, I feel like a big part of that equation is just as Odd Future was a lot of young music listeners' first hip-hop group. Frank Ocean was like their first real introduction to an R&B and neo-soul project. And for the time, it was certainly a unique one to be introduced to that down the road would just snowball in terms of the influence and the attention that it received. Now, to go into some defining characteristics that I think have held up over the years that really define Frank Ocean and this new era and creates a contrast from the stuff that you were hearing up until this point as far as like the classics and the biggest names go. You have this DIY aesthetic. You have this very low-key kind of melancholy, and also a very youthful exuberance as well. And what's funny is going back to this project is thinking about just like the prevalence of R&B music and R&B influences in a lot of bedroom pop that we hear today. And honestly, I feel like a lot of that DNA goes back to this record because of how low-key it is, how rough around the edges it is, how just, I guess, on a shoestring budget, it seems. Prior to this, you also had, Drake with a lot of his early stuff with Thank Me Later, which a lot of the cuts on that project were quite atmospheric and quite spacious. You could also argue Frank Ocean was building off of some of those Drake ideas on tracks like American Wedding as well as Nature Feels, where he's kind of doing his thing over these very pre-established, familiar instrumentals from the Eagles and MGMT. It's also worth noting the massive Kanye influence on this record as well, especially on some of the more auto-tune passages, on the rhythms presented on numerous tracks that occur in the second half of the tape. There are numerous video game references throughout the titles on this thing. You hear these cassette tape boombox pops and clicks as we transition from one moment of the record to the next. Again, a lot of which I think has left a strong impression on young musicians today, as well as some of Frank's contemporaries too, because going back to this tape, I feel like a lot of the emotional themes of these songs, as well as some of the musical influences on these tracks too, almost provide a little bit of a map for Tyler, the creator, to sort of escape out of the edgy prison that he locked himself into at a certain point in his career. And as you're starting to see those songs kind of seep into his catalog, where he's softening up a little bit, it's getting more melodic, it's getting more R&B driven, it's getting more vulnerable. Going back to Nostalgia Ultra, it's really clear that that's like, a vibe that he's going for. So all in all, yeah, I think this project has held up pretty well over the years. Sure, it is a little messy, and it is obviously not Frank's best by any means whatsoever, but it is quaint, it is sweet, it is passionate, and while, yes, as I said, it is a little messy, it is flawed, simultaneously, I think the blemishes on this record and just, low budget, it all seems, provides a blueprint for anybody starting out that wants to, get a bit of a baseline. If I can at least produce and create up to this level, maybe then it will allow me to ascend beyond that and build from there. Because, yeah, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter whether or not you're doing your thing over an Eagles instrumental, an MGMT instrumental with a somewhat shoddy mix. As long as the ideas are good and the performance is fine and people find it compelling, that's ultimately all that matters. And you don't need the biggest budget in the world and some huge album rollout in order to do that. So those are my thoughts. Those are my thoughts on this project. Very interesting and still entertaining beginnings for Mr. Ocean's career. Over here next to my head is another video that you can check out. Hit that up or the link to subscribe to the channel. Anthony Fantano, Frank Ocean forever.